Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. After you run through the news you need to know about, we run you through the fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. We have some interesting news to talk about. Not a whole lot of news to talk about, unfortunately. It is the dead period. But definitely fine. And dude, the running back stuff is bananas, and I think that's probably where we're going to start. It's very, very strange. So an update on Dalvin Cook. I don't know. There really isn't any. It seems he keeps putting out stuff that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. He said recently that he would love to play for whatever team DeAndre Hopkins plays for. Obviously, if you guys have been keeping up with the DeAndre Hopkins stuff, there's a lot of Patriots stuff there with DeAndre Hopkins and obviously the Bill O'Brien connection. The market for Dalvin Cook seems to be pretty bad. The market for running backs this entire offseason has been pretty awful. Leonard Fournette is a free agent, and I haven't seen his name be brought up. That's actually not true. His name has been brought up for the Miami Dolphins because he said recently on Good Morning Football that the Dolphins have a really good roster. I forgot that he even said that. But Leonard Fournette is a very talented player who you could get for very cheap. And I don't know. I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, Leonard Fournette would not be a bad consolation prize for the Dolphins if they decided to go with him. He is much more talented than Jeff Wilson, and would be a great complement to Raheem Mostert and A-Chain. Different skill set. I still think he fits the scheme. He's actually a pretty decent receiving back, a great pass protector for Tua especially. So, I was thinking about that, and that would not be a bad idea if the Dolphins look to Leonard Fournette. I would be pretty hyped up about that. So no new news on Dalvin Cook. We pretty much just went through it. The Dolphins seem to be kind of just, seeing, I guess if they can get him, it would be on a cheaper deal, which is what Barry Jackson reported earlier. We've already discussed that. And in other running back news, which is even more running back news for the Dolphins, a lot of people around the national media in the world really want the Dolphins to get a new running back. Josh Jacobs' name has been in trade rumors recently, and the Dolphins' name has also been brought up as a potential trade partner. This has been reported from a lot of different outlets, Sports Illustrated, a lot of Raiders outlets as well. Obviously, Josh Jacobs not happy with his situation either. Very similar to Saquon Barkley. If you've been keeping up with the Josh Jacobs stuff, they played him in the Hall of Fame game in preseason, which was a huge red flag. I believe he did finish the number one leading rusher in the NFL last year with 1,600 yards, and he had 12 rushing touchdowns. That could be another thing the Dolphins could look into. I don't know. He's only 25 years old, which is even crazier. So he's younger than Dalvin Cook. He's not as athletically gifted as Dalvin is, but he's a really great. He's great in short spaces. His vision is amazing. He's a very good receiving back, and he's a playmaker and would take a lot of pressure off of the passing game. And I think all three of those names would. Leonard Fournette could really help out in pass protection and really give the Dolphins someone who can grind away drives, especially late in games or even early in games, especially in the Miami Heat. Having to tackle Leonard Fournette would not be fun. Neither would Josh Jacobs, because Josh is, a bit of a grinder as well, even though he's way smaller than Leonard Fournette. But the Dolphins have been brought up in Josh Jacobs stuff as well. So we'll see what happens with the running back situation. A lot of people have pointed out, and this is just a fact, that Chris Greer really hasn't done much with the running back position to the point where, honestly, and I don't think I'm crazy in saying this, the Dolphins have had possibly the worst running backs stable. I'm not talking about last year, but the Myles Gaskin, Savon Ahmed, Duke Johnson. We tried, what's his face from Jordan Howard. They've been pretty bad over the last few years, especially since Tua has gotten in the league. I think it's pretty much been the worst in the NFL. The last great Dolphins running back you could either say Lamar, Miller, and no Sean Moreno. Before no Sean Moreno got hurt, he was really good. And Reggie Bush as well. Shout out to Reggie Bush. But it's been a while, so we'll see if Chris Greer finally, considers it, especially since like the run game is so important to this offense. And the defense is, and I know a lot of people have brought up the middle linebacker position, but the defense is set. It's more than set. So I don't think the running back position is a huge need. I don't think they really need to allocate too many resources to it. It would make them better because these players are really good. I mean, Josh Jacobs is a really good player. Dalvin Cook is a really good player. Anytime you add really good players, it's a big deal. But it's just strange that they've been in, and maybe it is because of the Dalvin Cook interest, but the fact that the Dolphins have been so heavily involved in all of these rumors dealing with running backs. So there's your running back update. But yeah, the running back stuff is definitely wearing thin. I think we talked about this last week, but we'll run through it really quickly. Zach Sealer, among players like Connor Williams and Christian Wilkins, is also looking for a new contract. This is reported from Pro Football Rumors and Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald. We talked about this last week. I love Zach Sealer, and I hope they can figure out something to do with him. This is an interesting report, and this is probably the most interesting one so far, or of the podcast, really. This comes from Pro Football Rumors and the Miami Herald, Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald. The Dolphins came into the offseason with the goal not to devote much money to their backup quarterback spot, but they became, quote, smitten with Jets with the Jets starter Mike White and signed him to a 2-year, $8 million deal. The reason this is an interesting report is it's weird that the Dolphins would go into an offseason, especially after last year, unless they like Skylar Thompson that much, but not willing to spend a lot of money on the backup quarterback position is very strange because of what happened last year. God bless Skylar Thompson. He was awesome in the preseason. He just did not play good in the other games that he played in. He had good moments, but he didn't play well. Like, he played pretty bad. And Teddy Bridgewater was, honestly, out of all the quarterbacks that I saw take snaps last year, might be the worst out of any team. He was as bad as it gets from the quarterback position. Like, he was pretty much rock bottom. So it's just strange that, and Chris has talked about the backup quarterback position and how important it is before in his press conferences. It's strange that they would go into an offseason thinking that, with that kind of a mentality, unless they really like Skylar Thompson. It didn't really go into detail on why they thought that, which is strange, but that was a report from one of them, someone who has a lot of connections in that organization, and Barry Jackson. So just strange. Thought it was weird. But shout out to Mike White. Hopefully, we won't have to see him on the field at all. I think we can all agree on that. And, Tua's gained a ton of weight this offseason. You guys, if you've been keeping up with the social media, so hopefully we won't have to see that. But if we do, in my opinion, and I know people have looked at Mike White's stats, and they're not great. But if you actually watch him play, he's a good backup quarterback. So I think that they have upgraded in that position, and that was a position that they needed an upgrade in. So I thought that they did a good job there, even though they went into the offseason thinking this wasn't something that they needed. This last news story comes from, again, the Miami Herald and Pro Football Rumors. Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald says that both Christian Wilkins and the Miami Dolphins remain motivated to get a deal done. An agreement remains elusive. They're still in talks, it seems. Obviously, a bunch of defensive tackles have signed over the last few weeks, and the Dolphins are still trying to get a deal done with Christian Wilkins. So that's good. Hopefully that gets done before the offseason. And again, if this deal gets done, I would not be surprised if they made another big move after that, because that could free up some cap space, doing a new deal with Christian. So maybe they use that to extend some other players like Connor Williams, or maybe they do go after one of the running backs that have been rumored to be Dolphins over the last few weeks. Who knows? We'll see. But yeah, that seems to be. I'm forgetting. No, I think we pretty much ran through it. I think we talked about Cam Smith having a good offseason so far, which is great. A-Chain has impressed a lot of people, but that's without pads, so who cares? He's running back. But the fact that Cam Smith has played well is great. I'm very excited to watch him play, especially in this defense. One of the things I want to tell you guys before we move on, because this next thing that we're going to talk about is actually pretty cool. And there is no fan Q. This might be the shortest podcast we've done in weeks. There is no fan Q&A this week because I forgot to post anything again. But what was I saying? Oh, okay. What the heck was I saying? Oh, yeah. You guys should check these stats out, which I thought was really interesting. In case you guys probably already knew this, but I did not know this. Jalen Phillips had one. Well, he was, I think, Hassan Reddick had, I believe, 16 sacks this past season, and Jalen Phillips had way more pressures than he did. Those numbers for Jalen Phillips really skyrocketed after the Bradley Chubb trade, which I thought was really interesting. And Jalen Phillips, doesn't have high numbers, but if you watch him play, and especially at the end of the year, man, he was really good, and really, really good. And I think the scheme hurt him a lot, but I would expect him to he might really cement himself as the best Dolphins defender this year. I could easily see that, and those numbers I think are pretty eye-opening. The fact that he is so high in pressures, and I think the scheme was so bad. I don't know. It just made me think of how good Jalen Phillips is going to be this upcoming season, and a better scheme. I mean, Vic Fangio's coaching him, and he's so talented. So I'm very excited to see him play in the scheme. For the last thing we're going to discuss, the Chris Sims podcast did a really cool 2-part episode where they ranked for each team best 21st century non-quarterbacks for each team in the NFL, and they had the list for the Miami Dolphins. So since the year 2000, these are the best players to play for the Dolphins that aren't quarterbacks. I don't think any quarterbacks would have made this list anyway, unfortunately. But I thought it was an interesting list. Ricky Williams, who played for the Dolphins from 2002 to 2010, made the list. Jake Long, only from 2008 to 2012. Mike Pouncey, 2011 to 2017. Shout out to Mike. Jason Taylor from 1997. Obviously he left and then came back in 2011. One of the best Dolphins of all time. Cameron Wake, 2009 to 2018. Who's forgotten? I think he's second all time in sacks with 98 in franchise history. Shout out to Cameron Wake. Again, a forgotten player. Zach Thomas from 1996 to 2007. Sam Madison, 1997 to 2005. Patrick Surtain, 1998 to 2004. And Xavier Howard, 2016 to current day. So X did make the list. That's the only current day Dolphin to make the list. I'm sure Jalen Waddle will make this list easily. He could easily supplant Jake Long. There's a lot of players that could supplant Jake Long on this list, or that are currently Dolphins that could supplant him. But I thought it was interesting. I actually don't have any gripes with this list. I think it's a very good list. People forget how dominant Jake Long was in such a short span, but he was really, really good. I think he had a lot of really high placements on the top 100 players list. He was a very good player. Injuries destroyed his career. I think everybody else on this list, from Ricky Williams to Zach Thomas to Jason Taylor, are all fan favorites. Shout out to X for making the list. Might be the best corner in Dolphins history if he can keep up his play. And I'm very excited to see what he does this year. Yeah, but there's nobody I would add to this. I'm trying to think if there's anybody. The only... Cameron Wake, obviously. out of the 2010s. I think other than X is the only player to make this list, which is probably true. I don't think. Oh, Mike Pouncey, excuse me. So 3 players from the 2010s made the list. Jake Long doesn't really count. He was literally not even really there for most of the 2010s, especially in 2012. But yeah, we've had some really good teams. We just had awful quarterbacks. I definitely think we could have won a championship, especially in the early 2000s, because some of those teams were kind of weak, but quarterbacks were just so. There was a huge drought from like 1998 to probably 2004. With quarterbacks, there were just not a lot of good ones. If you look at the quarterbacks that made the Super Bowl in the 2000s, like Jake Delhomme, and I can't remember the Giants quarterback, and I can't remember the Bucs quarterback right now. Rich Gannon obviously made it. But yeah, there was a window there where the Dolphins could have won a championship with that team that they had. I mean, they beat Peyton Manning with, I'm blanking on his name right now, Jay Fielder. I believe it was Jay Fielder who started that game. That was the last playoff game that the Dolphins have had at home. Well, no, that's not true. Excuse me, in 07 or 08. Technically, it was 08. Or was 08. Anyway, but yeah, the Dolphins did have a window early in the early 2000s, so I think they could have easily won a championship with that defense. Anyway, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm sure you guys are sick of talking about quarterbacks or running backs, but this team is really good. Can't wait to watch them play. I feel like I say that at the end of the podcast every time, but it's true. They're really good. And I'll see you guys in the next one.